Hi, my name is Jamie Graves. I'm the Japan Portfolio Manager here at Skurnik Wines and Spirits. This is your Sake 101. So, at its core, sake is crafted from a few basic ingredients: rice and water, yeast, and a special mold called koji, which gives sake a lot of depth of flavor overall. So sake, like beer, is crafted. I think of it as coming very much from the intention of the person making it. While the quality of the ingredients are very important, to me it's much more about the intention of the person making it and what they want to express. So the first thing most people, when they learn about sake, is talking about rice polishing, how much of the grain of rice that you're using. Why is that important? In a grain of sake rice, on the outside, you're going to have things like proteins and fats. When you have those in your sake, it's going to give you a lot of big, bold, more kind of rustic flavors. If you slowly shave those away and get down to your core starchy center, it's going to give you basically a wide canvas to be able to create a lot of different expressions. So how does geography, or as we say in wine, terroir, relate to sake? Not all much. You can grow great rice anywhere, you can move it around. So really, why would you choose to make a certain style of sake in a certain area? Mostly comes down to what is the cuisine in that area? What did people traditionally eat? If you're close to the ocean, do you have a lot of seafood? Do you have a lot of shellfish, things like that? Maybe you want a lighter, brighter sake that can go with that. A lot of people in Japan had never even heard of sushi until about the 1940s or 1950s. If you're further up in the mountains, you've got more rustic, bold cuisine, a lot of game meats, things like wild boar, venison. What kind of sake would you like to have with that? So that's a lot of the regional variation in sake comes from what were people traditionally eating and what would you want to drink with that. So what are the major styles or major terms you're going to see on a bottle of sake? First one you're going to see very commonly is a word called Junmai. Literally means pure rice, means there's no additives in there aside from the rice, water, yeast, and koji. But generally, if you see just Junmai on a label, you know you're going to get something that's very direct, food-friendly, maybe not very perfumey and layered, but a much more kind of rustic, bold, very delicious sake that's going to be great with food. So two great examples of Junmai that show the variation you can get in that style. One of my favorites, a great sake called Bijofu. They're located right off the Pacific Ocean, meant to pair with a lot of the great deep water seafood native to that region. Very clean, crisp, dry, a little bit minty. Lovely example of a Junmai sake. Another example, azumaichi, comes from Japan's deep south in an area called Saga. Cuisine down there is much richer, a lot more pork in the diet. You can grow sugarcane in that area, so you get a lot more sweetness to the sauces. Azumaichi sake is made a lot more rich, bold, savory to be able to stand up to that cuisine down there. Another style that you commonly see on labels is something known as ginjo. Literally means elegant brew. Ginjo, Daiginjo literally just means better ginjo. So ginjo, it's a comparatively newer style, very elevated, generally very aromatic, has a lot of complexity to it, really just developed over the past 100 years. A great example of that, one of the first makers to really show how great ginjo could be, is a maker called Isojiman. Also located right by the Pacific Ocean, makes very lovely, fruity, layered sake with a definitive saline finish to it that pairs really well with the seafood in that area. So a style we're seeing a lot more of recently is a style of sake known as nama. Nama literally means raw. It is sake that hasn't been pasteurized, that wants to give you the experience of sake, tasting it fresh from the tank without being aged, very kind of brash and light and alive. One of the most iconic nama sake out there is Kaze no Mori, Wind of the Woods. Back in the 90s, this was the first sake that was produced as nama all year round, not as a limited seasonal release, but as the identity of the sake. It's bright, it's brash, it hits the front of your palate immediately, it's got a lot of flavor, and it has a little bit of effervescence to it, a little bit of bubbly, which is just the experience of tasting sake straight from the tank. So two other styles we're seeing a lot more of recently are Kimoto and Yamahai. Very similar to one another. I like to think of them as akin to sourdough, or as in sourdough bread. So you start with a small starter, a little bit of rice and water. It picks up influence from the local environment, naturally develops some sourness, some acid to it, And then as you feed into your starter and build it up, that sourness and that character and that boldness translates to the sake fully. So a great example of that is Hojo Biden, an excellent sake from southern Japan. It's big, it's rustic, it's creamy, it's got a lot of acid to it, an excellent example of the Yamahai style. So each of these sake terms, they're not exclusive to one another. You could see one, two, or all of them on the same label. They're just going to give you a signpost, just an idea of what is going to be on the inside of that bottle. So Junmai, going to be very direct, very clean, very food-friendly. Ginjo, generally very perfumed, aromatic, very layered. Nama is going to have a lot of punch and impact to it right up front, very fresh. And then Kimoto or Yamahai, going to have a lot of sourness, body, a lot of character overall to the sake. So a bottle of sake can be pretty opaque. Even if you read the language, it can be hard to know what's going on inside. Want to give you a couple ideas or signposts to understand what's going on inside there. Whether it's a Junmai, a Ginjo, a Nama, a Kimoto, or a Yamahai. Where's it made? Who's making it? Is meant to go with seafood, meant to go with richer cuisine. Hopefully these are things that can help you choose a delicious bottle of sake.